Good morning to all, and welcome to the Community Service and Public Safety Committee meeting for today, October 25th, 9 a.m. And I'm conducting it in Town Hall. Krista, in terms of FOIA compliance, are we in order?
Yes, sir, we are.
Krista, would you kindly conduct the roll call?
Certainly, sir. Mr. Harkins.
Here.
Mr. Ames.
Here.
Mrs. Becker.
Here.
Mr. Lennox.
Here.
Mr. Stanford.
Here.
And sir, we also have Mr. Brown on the line too from Town Council.
Okay, thank you. We have an agenda before us. Are there any comments or changes from staff? Hearing
Move
none.
to accept.
A motion to accept. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. We have the minutes of September 27th before us. Is there a motion for their approval? Thank you. Second. Minutes of September 27th before us. Is there a motion for their? Please raise your right hand.
Chairman, I'm going to have to abstain because I was not at that meeting.
Okay. Extension so recognized. Now, the next item on the agenda is appearance by citizens, something we welcome. We're here working on behalf of the citizens. We ask that you just be attentive to the following, please. We'd like good decorum and politeness. We also would like you to adhere to a limitation of 3 minutes. And when you're recognized, please state your name and then proceed. Krista, would you like to initiate the appearance by citizens?
Yes, sir. As of Friday at 4:30 p.m., we received, 7 citizens had signed up to appear before before the committee today. As of this morning, 2 of those citizens have dropped off. I've got 6 on the line, I'm sorry. And the first one will be Edwina Dunlap. Edwina?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Members of the Town Council, Town Manager, and staff, thank you for this opportunity for us to present issues at Islanders Beach Park and our request to return Islanders back to the exclusive use of Hilton Head residents as it was originally meant to be. Our 3 speakers today represent a much larger group of concerned Hilton Head residents asking for these requests. As said, Islanders was originally intended for the use of Hilton Head resident vehicles with beach pass decals. However, several years ago, in order to obtain funds for beach renourishment, the town agreed to put 25 public parking meters at the park. This opened Islanders parking to vacationers and day trippers. When there are no meters available, many simply park in any available space. Low fines and little to no enforcement have encouraged people to ignore the rules and park in resident-only spaces. Social media shows that vacationers are encouraging other visitors to use Islanders for, quote, easy, cheap parking and great facilities. We were also surprised to find out that there are many beach pass decals sold to timeshare guests. Apparently, timeshare groups have been directing their guests to Islanders, and these guests are purchasing parking decals in increasing numbers, thus reducing the parking available for residents. The parking use problem has steadily gotten worse and reached a boiling point this past summer, which prompted the residents to organize and ask for your attention and help. Therefore, we're asking Town Council to implement some actions before Memorial Day. Specifically, that the town, 1, issue a resolution ordinance that rededicates Islanders Beach Park for residents as a resident-only park facility. 2, that you tighten up the definition of a Hilton Head resident in order to control the number of beach pass decals sold. We have provided ways to define resident based on South Carolina state law in the 4-page document you were given ahead of this meeting. But note, a timeshare owner with 2 or 3 weeks does not meet the South Carolina legal definition of a resident. 3, do not allow decals to be issued to commercial vehicles, non-resident golf carts, or golf carts that cannot legally be driven to Islanders per South Carolina law. 4, remove the parking meters by January the 25th. 5, prohibit commercial shuttle buses or non-decal vehicles from entering Islanders and dropping passengers off at the front. 6, increase the number of parking spaces for residents by 30 to 50 spaces. 7, significantly increase fines and enforce towing on an hourly basis for parking violations. And 8, just as you did last summer, have park entrance attendants for Islanders between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Thank you for your time. My teammates will follow to discuss the other 2 goals, and we are available for questions at any time.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Ms. Dunlap. Second, sir, we have Ellen Whaley. Miss Whaley,
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
please proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Okay. My name is Ellen Whaley. I'm going to discuss Goal 2, Safety and Infrastructure at Islanders Park. The working group has discussed safety and requests that the town look at the heightened risk of large increases in pedestrian traffic that enters from the main road at the vehicle entrance at Islanders. The current foot traffic has now been estimated over 400 plus daily during the peak season based on observations from attendants at Islanders. It also appears the greatest contributor to that pedestrian traffic issue is coming from the local timeshare complexes, which estimated approximately 400 people per day. New development that can increase pedestrian traffic will reach at least 400 or 500 based on the sizing, therefore reaching 1,000 pedestrians from these units alone. The town must come to recognize this unmanaged pedestrian traffic creates more safety issues, both for those pedestrians, seniors, family groups in their wagons, and for vehicular traffic, as walkers spread out in the center of the road when using the park to get to the beach. This increasingly puts drivers, walkers, and the town at risk, the town specifically for not recognizing this risk and addressing it proactively. Now is the time to recognize and deal with this risk. It is also clear, even to the casual observer, that the facilities in the park are exhibiting signs of great stress and overuse. Showers, restrooms, boardwalk areas, more difficult and costly to maintain with the increased capacity. We pose the question to the town, were Islanders' facilities even designed for daily user throughput that will now number over 800 plus people daily at peak season? We recognize managing pedestrian traffic requires a different approach for residents to use the park. This is not a novel problem, and many U.S. coastal and other communities have implemented recreational park controls using things such as IDs, gates, or attendants in order to control capacity. The town is working on funding and implementing new resident recreation facilities across the island. It should look to the future and implement proper user capacity controls to protect the use by residents who approve of making these local investments for the long term, and we look forward to enjoying these facilities for their health and relaxation. We stand ready to work with the town on these solutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whaley. Sir, we have Sherry Bittner. Ms. Bittner? Ms. Bittner, are you on the line? Okay, sir, while we wait for Ms. Bittner to join the call or jump on the line, I'm going to move to Martin Lesh. Mr. Lesh?
I'm here.
Oh, Ms.
Sherry
Bittner,
Bittner.
you are there. Okay, thank you, Ms. Bittner. Please go ahead. Ms. Bittner, please go ahead.
You mean with my 3 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, we have an order. Ellen Whaley is going first, or excuse me, Edwina's going first. Or else
Ma'am,
mine
we've
won't
already
make
gone
sense.
through, we've already gone through the first 2 speakers, ma'am.
Oh, my apologies. I have not been able to hear anything online. I apologize. I will start mine now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Sherry Bittner, and I want to briefly elaborate on the previous concern regarding timeshare foot traffic. The greatest contributor to the foot traffic issue is coming from the 6 timeshare complexes located across the street in Port Royal Village. As stated earlier, timeshare vacationers do not meet the South Carolina legal definition of a resident. The new timeshare complex getting ready to be built at 15 Wimbledon Court will add 166 units, which is going to greatly increase the foot traffic problem, which is already over 400 people per day. It is important to note that many of the timeshare vacationers from Port Royal Village have access to the Westin facilities, to include beach access. The residents of Hilton Head believe that now is the time to address the timeshare foot traffic through Islanders Park. Now I'd like to conclude with our final goal, which is to create a strong message to the general public that Islanders Beach Park is a resident-only park. First, for the town to place large visible signage installed at the immediate entrance of Islanders parking lot stating beach pass decals only, towing strictly enforced, no pedestrian traffic. The second request is to change the town website to clearly reflect the restricted resident-only access to Islanders Park. Third, improve tourist information on how to get to the beaches. For example, the town will send letters to the timeshare POAs informing them that Islanders Beach Park is a resident-only park, while also providing information on public parks for their timeshare guests' use. Second, park attendants will have a list of Hilton Head Island public parking areas near the beaches for non-residents' use. We want to be clear. The residents of Hilton Head are in no way denying anyone's right to enjoy the beaches. The tourists simply need to be made aware that there are many access points on the island to the beaches and that Islanders Park is restricted to residents. To assist tourists in getting to the beaches, the Breeze Trolley, which has multiple stops on Follyfield Road, can easily take tourists to other public access points to the beach. The residents believe it is inherently unfair that tourists have the luxury of walking through Islanders Beach Park to get to a beach, while most residents must drive 20 minutes to get there. The residents believe it is reasonable to expect that tourists can also drive to designated public parkings to get to the beaches. On behalf of the residents of Hilton Head, we'd like to wrap up by asking the question, are residents a priority to the town or not? As so many residents have said, all we're asking for is a small slice of the island to call our own. This is the town council's opportunity to show the residents of Hilton Head that our needs are important. We sincerely want to thank you for your interest and support in this important issue.
Thank you, Ms. Bittner. Next, sir, we have Martin Lesh. Mr. Lesh?
Hello.
Go ahead, Mr. Lesh.
Thank you. I wanted to address some of the strategic plan meeting I saw last week. We hired an excellent candidate to head up the OCA, one whose unique skills were valued for a reason, and we need to allow her to do her job without having a politicized agenda coming from council. Some members of council don't seem to fully understand that EDI training relates to the grant process and the betterment of arts organizations and NPOs. Some seem willing to put our town at a disadvantage in gaining access to funds and grants and expertise, and stymie decades of work by volunteers in the arts community to wage some sort of cultural war agenda. Town leadership has all been invited to meet with the Arts Council in an open letter distributed recently. I would recommend they take that meeting and might be beneficial to resolving this problem. We are organized and have a large enough media presence to reach the community and make our points. I'd rather that some see the light that the community created these goals with years of hard work and feedback. Inclusion means all voices get heard, not censoring out the ones that threaten a narrow political worldview. The whole purpose of inclusion is to increase understanding, not foster segregation of thought and communities. There seems to be a member of council who is intent on throwing out some of the goals and principles laid out in our plan. They want to rewrite all the work that was done to fit a narrow political narrative. That's not our community. That's not how we operate. We need people that recognize the island has equity issues, and we need to address them in an open, honest manner, uncompromised by personal political ambitions that use division as a prop. I urge Council to pass the OCA strategic plan, including the EDI training, and move forward with the overall guidance laid out in our plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lesh. Next, sir, we have Risa Prince. Ms. Prince? Ms. Prince, are you on the line?
Krista, Ms. Prince is on the line. Her audio, there's a delay in her audio connecting though.
Okay, should I move on to Ms. Anderson?
I'm pulling
You
this.
confirm that you can hear me, please?
Yes, ma'am, we sure can. Risa, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. These comments reflect only my personal beliefs, not those of any groups I usually represent. Elected officials who abuse or engage in actions that appear to abuse their power for personal gain or to promote their personal political agenda are breaching their oaths of office and violating their commitment to their constituents. The last town council agenda included exploration of land purchase on Bradley Circle. While the public does not know the exact matters discussed since it was an executive session, that is Ms. Becker's street, and it is widely known that she has previously voiced concern about her Gullah neighbor's property and how it negatively impacts her property value. According to the exceptional town strategic plan Mr. Orlando presented last Thursday, there are no identified strategic projects on Bradley Circle, nor does that residential street have any particular strategic value to the town. The property is not listed for sale, so I wonder who motivated the town to solicit it. And this action, coupled with other moves that worsened the beach parking crisis and reduced Palmetto Breeze's fleet fuel efficiency, and calls to damage our vibrant arts and culture economy and defund public schools, are causing tremendous concern for our residents. As South Carolina voters do not have the power of a recall election to unseat an existing elected, we must rely on those who surround the abusers to curtail their impact. So, Mr. Mayor and Town Council members, I urge you to support the strategic plan and resist any attempts to push personal agendas at the expense of the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. And last, please, sir, we have Ms. Stella Anderson. Ms. Anderson? Sir, we have Ms. Stella Anderson.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm here. Good morning.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead and mute your background sound, please.
Good morning. I'm unmuted, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I need you to mute your background sound, please.
I'm unmuted.
There you go. You're all set. Go ahead and begin when you're ready.
Okay, I don't have any background sounds. Can you hear me now?
You're all set. Go ahead and yes, ma'am. You're ready.
Okay. I don't have any background sounds. Can you hear me now? Okay. In July, this committee approved the Office of Cultural Affairs Strategic Plan. Town Council approved it in September and then rescinded it in early October. I ask you, Mr. Harkins and Ms. Becker, I would like for you to state on the record what your issues are with the professional development opportunities offered to community arts organizations to diversify their audiences. Your motions to rescind are hampering economic opportunity on our island. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson, thank you so much. Mr. Harkins, that concludes appearance by citizens for today.
Thank you, Krista, and thank you, members of the public, for sharing your thoughts and concerns and ideas. It's appreciated.
Mr. Harkins, I would like to take a moment, please, to correct the record.
Tammy,
Yes, sir.
go right ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to correct the record by beginning with some confusion and misinformation that's being spread throughout the town by a particular group of individuals with regard to a strategic plan for the Office of Arts and Culture that I asked 3 times plus more to get information specific to what items within the strategic plan we're referencing, and therefore that is the reason that the vote was ultimately rescinded by other council members who also agree that when a council member is asking questions, those questions must be answered, if not by our town manager, but by our department's heads. In terms of whether or not diversity, equity, and inclusion training is appropriate within the Office of Cultural Affairs, you only have to look back to the founding documents to conclude that nowhere within that document was any such training suggested or approved through policy when the office was created. Furthermore, the job description for that director to run this very important office does not include anywhere a responsibility or duty to the town in her performance to provide such training. However, at the end of all of my objections to passing something without full knowledge of what was being passed, ultimately I did come across was given the information. I'm still waiting for some, but let me tell you, to start out with, what was uncovered was a non-transparent training under the guise of professional development that is nothing more than critical race theory, with participants using some of the most horrendous language to suggest that the white population on this town and across this country, because it follows, is unworthy and must be broken down. If someone wants to see the video, I'm happy to share, but there's a 3-hour video. None of this was transparent. If I asked for something, any town council member asks for something, and it's not forthcoming, it raises more red flags. To be called a name as I was by a colleague in a paper, not just me, but my other fellow council members, and to hear these comments is unworthy of those within the arts organizations who are continuing to mislead the town. Furthermore, on a separate matter, so wrap that up for now, but I'm happy to share what I have. Secondly, in terms of Bradley Circle, the misrepresentations here are horrendous. Nowhere along the line is any of what was stated a true fact. What is well known and documented is that from 2014 with the LMO rewrite that changed our small residential RM8 neighborhood into resort development, I have fought every day as a citizen and a resident and a property owner in this area to push back and to rezone our property back to the RM8 status. Along those lines, when the final vote was taken, there were 3 parcels that were left resort development. And not a second or a day or a conversation has passed when I have said that the reasons for returning us to RM8 were many, but one included the overdevelopment of this small one-way in, one-way out neighborhood. And that 3 additional properties yet undeveloped as RD would make that situation in those conditions more dangerous and unsuitable for the area. I continue to fight that battle. It has nothing to do with any particular individual who owns any particular property. In fact, my friends. However, it does have to do with overdevelopment and inappropriate decision back when we rezoned to leave those properties RD. I continue to provide as much effort as I can for the public safety and welfare, not only in my own neighborhood, as I have a right to do since I represent them, but across this island for every individual. In terms of defunding the public schools, you couldn't be further from the truth. The idea of providing options for parents to choose within a charter school system is smart and ought to be pursued. Takes nothing away from anyone. It's a choice. choose your children, to send your children where you choose, when you choose on your own, but give options to them. Very
Tammy,
simple.
Tammy,
Now I just, and Miss Anderson, I got 10 minutes. Miss Anderson wants to know about she wants to have that dialogue. I think I've pointed it out. But when public dollars are spent without clear transparency, when public workshops are held by town staff utilizing town time in a town-owned building for issues that are clearly displayed in that video and the handouts, I, as a representative as this town, whether I'm on town council or as a resident just living in this town, will stand up and tell you that it's wrong. Transparency is an absolute must. So the propaganda and the misinformation that's being spread needs to stop. Happy to share anything you want that I've spoken about today. Thank you so much for your time and patience, and we can move on.
okay, the next item on our agenda is new business. I'd like to invite Chief Tadlock to present his report, please. Chief?
Hey, good morning. Good morning, members of committee and council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Chief.
Okay. I will boot up. I have a PowerPoint presentation for you this morning that will cover the first 6 months of the year. And we'll talk about some of our accomplishments, and then we'll look to the future a little bit. So I will boot that up. Can you see it?
Yes.
Are you still good?
Yes.
All right, so good morning again. Thanks for having us. I've got my staff on the sidelines if you have any questions for us later on or anytime during the presentation. Like I said in the beginning, this is kind of an overview of the first 6 months of the year, what we accomplished, and some of our data, just to keep you informed. So just a summary, starting off here with our overall response numbers, and I would point you down to the bottom right-hand corner there. You can see the numbers came back up after the first 6 months, obviously with COVID starting in March of 2020. Numbers dropped off April and May of that year as we faced a lot of uncertainty, and then picked back up obviously later that year. But then the first half of this year, you can see the numbers were our total response numbers. This is all responses, emergent, non-emergent, that are classified as calls in our system, and covers both EMS and fire. So we're up around 4,000 for the 6 months. Another trend, and I would tell you, I've just got an overview of data. This time I'll give you more comprehensive data at the annual report, since we typically look at it on an annual basis. But our average calls per incident per day tend to follow that same trend, a little lower in the winter months, and then picks up in the spring and certainly in the summer. And if you have any questions along the way, just let me know. So one data point we look at related to our overall response is how our station zones are allocated, the fire stations, and our response numbers within those zones. Here you see this is a count by the station zone for each fire station, and this is a fire incident response. So this would be something coded in our response data as fire, hazmat, EMS, fire alarm, or not EMS, sorry, fire alarm, everything but EMS, hazmat, technical rescue, those type numbers. And we look at these to see how our allocation of our fire station and the risk within each district it plays out, and try to come up with interventions.
Chief, I have a question.
Sure.
Would you quickly go through the location of the different stations?
Yes, sir, I will. It's a good point. Okay, station one, I'm going to go around the pie, so to speak. Station one is Shipyard, at the entrance to the Shipyard off Pope Avenue. Station two is at Sea Pines, down in Sea Pines. Station three is the Mid Island by the church up here between Port Royal and Folly Field. Station 4 is often referred to as the back gate of the Hilton Head Plantation, up at the entrance to the back side of Hilton Head Plantation off Squire Pope Road. Station 5 is the front gate of Hilton Head Plantation off Whooping Crane Way. Station 6 is Palmetto Dunes at Mid Island. And Station 7 was commonly referred to as the toll booth station, which after the meeting the other day, that we'll have to change that name, but that's the latest addition that was added out by at the end of Marshland Road at the intersection of the Cross Island Parkway.
Appreciate your taking the time. Thank you.
No problem. What's common to us, I understand sometimes isn't to other people. So we also look at our response data as our fire apparatus and their numbers. We look at that across the board. And this can be, I would tell you, this is a response by a fire apparatus. We do send fire apparatus to back up our ambulance response on critical calls referred to as Delta and Echo. Those are coded by the CAD in our dispatch center, and typically is a more serious nature of medical incident where more hands on deck helps with the patient care and transport. So following the fire response, I pull up each 6 months for you the fire loss in the community over $25,000. We have other loss that's not as significant, but just in the interest of time and being able to show you the data. These are the higher loss fires that occurred in the first 6 months. You can see 3 of them were single family dwellings, 2 were vehicle fires, and 1 was a multifamily building off Muddy Creek. And then I would tell you, after these fires, we tend to do some intervention in the neighborhoods to get back out and promote smoke detectors and other fire safety information in those areas after those fires. We also provide you the open burning data. This is for the registered burns on approved dates. You can see it's been consistent now. We have on the far right, you see the 500 permits in the system. These are people that have registered to burn on their property, and then they have to sign up the day of the burn. And we issued some warnings, and then we occasionally issue a citation if the parties that are open burning are not following the rules. Typically, that's burning trash. We try to be fair with this. I've said before, we have a mechanism in our dispatch center. We can track that if we go out, we give them a warning, make them aware of the rules, and then if we end up going back where they're not following the rules, we have that data. So we're just not out there writing tickets. We try to work with the individuals and the people that are learning to burn and the rules, and then if we have to, we'll issue a citation, but we try to work with them first. So now I'm going to jump into our EMS response data, which is, as I've said before, is typically 70–75% of our total call volume. Here again, we go around the stations and look at the workload by percentage of each station. And I would call out for this 6 months, and I'll show you the data, next year when we have our annual numbers. But Station 4 has seen an increase down at the bottom, the yellow, and if you recall back when Bayshore was being built, we had a concern that would impact Station 4 there at the back gate of Hilton Head Plantation. And it certainly has. I ran just some numbers the other day, and we run a call to that facility, not every day, not every other day, but the data shows that on a consistent basis, we're running there about 15 times a month. And to some degree, that's expected, just like it was along the Main Street corridor with the facilities located there. That happens. But so that is an increase for that station from, they typically were closer to the 10–11%, and they've moved up to 16% for that station. And I would highlight, as we talked about the fire stations, that's the call is registered within that station zone. That doesn't necessarily mean that station's assigned apparatus responded to that call, because they could have been out on another call and that coverage been provided by a station on either side. So here again, we track our medic unit responses just like we do the fire apparatus. And with those medics, the same way, sometimes a medic, and they do respond to various types of fires as to support the fire response, in that they may need to provide aid to someone injured in the fire, or they provide rehab to our personnel if we get engaged in the fire. We also track through our EMS system the disposition of calls. Just real quick, you can see that we transported 2,200 patients, just over that. We do obviously respond to patients that are treated and not transported. They elect not to go with us. Sometimes there's false calls, which is kind of a treatment, no treatment, no transport. Some people just refuse. And then we have our persons that have passed on based on the situation. Some resuscitations are attempted, and then some are not. We track the type of incidents by complaint, and this helps with our community risk and public education. We look at the numbers and say, okay, what programs can we come up with through implementation or new ideas to target certain elements of the type of risk we're seeing, which is obviously falls and certain things like that. Some medical events you can't plan for, but so we're always looking at these numbers to say, okay, what can we do better to try to engage the public and do some intervention in our public education programs. We've been tracking through the opioid epidemic that was started back, it seems long time ago now after pandemic, but we track this each year through our administration of the drug. And you can see there, I circled the 30 just to say that's where we're at mid-year. So, it appears if the trend continues, we'd still be up around 50 to 60 administrations in a year. Which is, I think with the pandemic, we've talked about it internally. You saw a drop, things seemed to be getting better. And then we had the COVID started in March and we saw a little increase associated with that, I believe. Another response metric in EMS we track is our off-island transports, which obviously when we send a unit off-island, it reduces the coverage that we have on island. And we've been working with the hospital on this after the peak in 2019. And it dropped some in 2020. Part of that was due to COVID, obviously. And then we're, somewhere around 20 this year in the first half. So we were working with Jeremy Clark, and we'll work with Joel, the new CEO, to continue to look at this. There's a lot of challenges, I think you all know, and you read across the board in workers, and private transport EMS has also faced challenges in being able to hire and maintain workforce, and there's a nationwide shortage of paramedics. So, but we're working with the hospital, and
it is the middle of, it's 9:38.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was a question. So we're continuing to work with the hospital on that. I would point out the orange bar graph on that chart is where we just pick up a patient at the hospital, take them to the airport, and they're flown out by helicopter through the hospital transport. That's not a trauma call where we take them to the hospital. This is a direct facility from Hilton Head Hospital to Charleston, say, and we go pick the patient up and take them to the airport to meet the helicopter. That's the orange bar graph. And of course, our cardiac response data, we talked to you last year about it, obviously with COVID and everything slowed down, and the amount of PPE and how everything played out in that response for the safety of the responders. Our numbers had dropped drastically. They had all over the country, unfortunately. Through 2020, as we learned about the virus and we knew our safety procedures were working, we started to go back to what our normal response and operations were, and we saw a little better increase. We were at 25% for the 6 months. Obviously, we always strive for that goal of 50%. We had that rolling average until the COVID hit. So slight improvement there. We'll keep tracking it, and hopefully we can get that number back up. I would just show you that when there's an unwitnessed cardiac arrest in the field, the survivor, you can see down there was 0 of 13. That just highlights that if a person is not witnessed and they go down for a lengthy time that no one knows, then the chance of resuscitation is not good at all. So we're going to keep working on that. We got new EMS battalion chief, Tina Sanders. Tom Boothway, most of you know, retired in July. And we just promoted our EMS captain from internally. So we're going to get back on our EMS related to cardiac arrest and circle back to what we can do. We still do it very well, but obviously COVID created some unique challenges within that response model. So what I want to do now is just jump into some divisional reports and kind of highlight some accomplishments to keep presentation moving. So here, just to highlight, our fleet maintenance department. All of our department maintains data and numbers, and we benchmark against what we did last year, and we set goals for the future. So these are just some numbers that have been provided to you. I call out to your left over there the accomplishments with fleet maintenance. We had a opening for a new mechanic. We got Mike Valera hired in January. He's been a good addition to the staff, came to us with experience. So we're fully up and operating in fleet maintenance, and that's a good thing. For the last couple of years, we've been challenged there. And the crew out there in fleet maintenance took some time and cleaned house, so to speak, and we got rid of some surplus equipment in coordination with procurement, and discharged that through some means and just put some money back in the general fund to clean up the area and get some return on investment, so to speak. Emergency management, Tom Dunn obviously has been busy. I would highlight going back to the 6 months we're talking about here. We were very knee deep in COVID, and this is the only data I would tell you that just goes back into 2020 a little bit. We started helping the hospital through the community testing program up there right at the end of November. So this data here covers just November and December, and then the full 6 months, which the testing ended in April, that our participation. So it's still about 6 months. But anyway, we had 80 days up there with at least one member of fire rescue. We sometimes had 2 members up there trying to support the hospital, because you remember the hospital was trying to treat patients and take care of the normal functions they give to the community. So we contributed 444 staff hours, 444. And then Tom coordinated that we were able to get reimbursement from state DHEC through the CARES Act, I believe, for the $24,600 for our participation up there. And that, if you remember the timeline, the testing was very ongoing and at a high level back in January, February, March. So our team was up there helping in addition to doing our regular duties. And Tom did a good job to coordinate that. And while he was doing that, we still updated the emergency operations plan. He finalized the COOP plan with the continuity of operations plan with the pandemic annex, which of course we were doing real world at the time. And then he also worked on releasing the emergency operations plan field guide in an electronic version that's out on the website. And we distributed over 1,000 guides in English and Spanish. So we keep moving even when we were busy with COVID. Our safety and professional development division, which is our training division, we break out our training hours. We document by different topics. You can see there. I would highlight the firefighter training in the purple. That's any training a firefighter puts in. So that's why that number is so much larger than the other numbers that we document all of our training. The group in safety and professional development implemented some new task books over the spring to try to help our new members in their development process sign off certain requirements of the job and finalize that into a task book. 911 center, there again, we benchmark certain data up in the 911 center to measure our performance and set improvement goals. You can see some of the numbers there on answering 911 calls within 5 seconds and 10 seconds, their training hours, total calls in the chart in the middle of what they're doing. And then over on the left side of the screen, to me, the beach markers, we updated beach marker locations in our computer-aided dispatch. The signs you see out on the beach are tied to an address, so that the goal is our responders on the land side go to the address that gets them closest to the beach marker to improve our response time and service delivery to the citizens on the beach. And the team over in the 911 center also worked to update their training manual to achieve APCO certification, which is a national governed body that sets training standards. So they're working on that. Fire prevention. These are the numbers for them, the different things they do for fire code inspections and follow-up, plans review, building permits, business license. I would tell you the accomplishment we started last spring was with the mobile food vendors. We set up a permitting process so that they go through a fire safety inspection to make sure their propane and other elements of their cooking is within standard and is safe, so that when they go out in the community, they've at least been given the information, and the initial setup of their food vendors is safe. And we follow that up with on-site visits at the various events. Public ed within the Bureau of Fire Prevention. Obviously, with COVID, we had to change our ways. We didn't interact as much, so the numbers did drop off. We still continued to do different things. We tried to do them a little safer and a little less personnel involved. You can see the list there of all the various things we do out in the community. We hope to get back to that full strength by next year. And when we've slowly improved it as we went along and we've learned about the virus. I would tell you, over on the accomplishment side, we had to look at obviously not holding classes and things like that. So the team came up with virtual assessments for CPR and AED skills, so we could do them virtually and keep people certified in CPR. Many people need that for their job in various daycares and facilities like that. So we wanted to keep that going. We did a virtual safe sitter classes there, again, trying to come up with ways to keep engaging the public, keep our programs moving without jeopardizing safety. We also did increase the geocaching and scavenger hunts to engage the public in fire safety information. Fire investigations. This is the team goes out after a fire and we identify the cause. As you can see there, we had unintentional, undetermined. Some of them are failure of equipment. We use this as our intervention programs too, if we can find a way through the investigation to say, okay, is there something we can do to educate the public and improve fire safety, so we reduce the numbers. And then we had 3 intentional, and one of those was a cover up behind Shops on the Parkway, where they had ignited the van behind the bike store. So overall, they conducted 18 investigations, and we also got approval and implemented a new camera that will do a 360-degree picture of the scene, which can help you identify and pin down where the fire started through that type of technology. So that's the end of the divisional reports. Do you have any questions on that? Anything?
Any comments, questions from committee members?
Yes, Bill, I do. First, let me say I am always so impressed with the accomplishments of your department, Chief. Hearty compliments to all of your team for doing a fabulous job. My question goes to the growth in incidents. I think back to your very first slide, which was showing a fairly steady growth in incidents that you're dealing with a drop-off having to do with COVID, which we all understand. I'm trying to understand why we're having a growth in these incidents. If we believe the recent census, our population hasn't changed that much. So is this more tied to the growth of tourism here, or do you have an opinion on that? Thank you.
Well, I would say I would approach it two ways. I think as Hilton Head has been very busy, I think we realized, I think more people came to Hilton Head during the pandemic because they were, virtual schools and virtual work. So we saw as we got into last fall, after that initial spring slowdown, things picked up. And I think that tourism certainly plays a role in our call volume. We see that every summer as the peak season gets here, more visitors on the island. You just have more. You have people that have medical emergencies. You have car accidents, bike accidents. So with more people, you see an increase. We've always seen that increase over my 30 plus years here. It's more dramatic now, as we all know, because the island has become the shoulder season, as they say. And even the winter, we have more people come here and spend 3 months in the winter time than we had in the past. I would also say it's just better healthcare, and we're aging. And as people age and they live longer, they sometimes require more service from EMS. And we've seen that, like I pointed out at Station 4, Bayshore has, increased the number of emergencies in that station's zone. And that happened over the years, going back 20 years, as Main Street developed and the communities there for the elderlies developed. Station 5 started there at the front gate of Hilton Head Plantation. We saw their call volume go up. So yeah, I think the growth in population that has occurred over time, but it hasn't been a spike, has played a role in that. I think the aging of the community and just the general, how would you say, how the island is busy. It's busy with construction. There's a lot of things happening. So I think it's a little bit of everything. You've seen our numbers go up with the development on the island, and that tends to occur. Does that help?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill?
Any other comments? David, please?
Yes, I'd like to follow up on Glenn's question. And again, I think Glenn articulated how much confidence we on town council have with your entire operation, Chief. Kudos on that. My question, the follow-up question is, roughly what percentage of your EMS calls are generated by tourists? Do you have any idea? And what percentage of EMS calls are medical, related perhaps to age?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but we can do that. I can run some numbers. We ran it, I don't know, in the past, it's been 4 or 5 years ago, as far as the number of the zip code of the patient being transported. Was it, was it a
You'll have to
visitor?
move right along.
So we can run that number. I can give it.
I would appreciate it, because I think it has some basis of our decisions on funding. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's all, Bill.
Thank you, David. Any other comments, questions?
Bill, I do.
Yes, Tammy, please.
So I would like to take this opportunity and every opportunity that I can to thank the Hilton Head Island Fire and Rescue team. They are absolutely the best. When someone needs them, whatever the emergency may be, they respond, and they respond cheerfully, and they are professional and completely competent in every regard. And whatever, from my perspective, you can do to support them, I do. And I just want them to know that we value them and that we thank them every day.
Thank you, Tammy. Any other comments, questions? Chief, I just have one for maybe another meeting, but I noted that almost 25% of your calls are related to falls. And falls, the incidence of falls goes directly in line with the aging population here. And just a thought to share with us either programs you have or you might be able to help join with others in terms of education for all of us to do some of the basics to try to reduce that number in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, we certainly will. We've done some programs in the past, and obviously with COVID, things like that got interrupted. But yeah, we've had some fall prevention training, and we worked with some of the various communities on the island to try to help them out. But we'll continue to look at that. I agree.
Well, again, thank you, Chief, and on behalf of the mayor and all of our colleagues on town council and staff, you do a fantastic job. I know you're going to keep up the good work, and you have our full support. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a couple more slides to finish up. I felt like I wanted to give you a chance to ask a few questions before I moved. But just
go right ahead.
Okay, just a few more. So, staffing, we talk about each time we meet with you, just kind of give you an update. We're still trying to catch up with everything shutting down in 2020. Fire Academy shut down, EMT class shut down. So we're still trying to climb our way back out of that. All the vacancies you see at 11, we all but a couple have been hired, but they're in various stages of onboarding. We had one 911 center resignation, and we got that position. I believe they're starting either this week or next week. So that's good. Kind of a summary of what led to those vacancies. You see there, we had 4 retirements and we had 8 resignations, and of the 8, 4 moved back out of the area. I did want to highlight, as I mentioned, Tom Boothole retired, and Tina Sanders was promoted. She was the captain of EMS. She's been moved up, and Peter Janura, who was out as on the line, has been promoted to EMS captain, and he starts today. And I would just highlight, if you, through the professional publications, as in every organization and industry out there right now, staffing for EMS and fire has been tough. We see articles all across the country, and for dispatch centers, there's just a shortage of workers out there, and it's impacting fire and EMS, also paramedics. Real quick, just to highlight some accomplishments the first 6 months. Fire Station 2, we moved in on June 8th, great facility down there. They've been finishing up the punch list all summer and into the fall. So as soon as we can get through and be able to invite the public into the building and all of you without masks, we're going to do an open house. But at this point, I've kind of put that on hold. We've prepared our documents for reaccreditation. And I would tell you, I've got approval from Mark to send each council member our community risk assessment and standard of cover. I've talked about that for over a year now. We submitted that to the CFAI team, and they're reviewing it, but Mark has given me permission to go ahead and send it out to all of you for review. And then I'll come back to this committee and give you a summary like I did for our strategic plan and kind of explain the document to you. So that will be coming to you soon. We received a grant to fund some of our EMT students out at TCL, $13,000. We got all of our staff vaccinated in the spring, or not all of them, of course, but we got the ones that were requested and were provided the vaccine. We established a hiring pool, but I would tell you we're probably going to establish another hiring pool this spring. We still took part in a hazmat exercise, and the staff named one of the old rowboats out back after me. That's a little humor there, the SS Tadlock. So because we have been able to improve our rescue boats through the grants from the state. So like I mentioned, Fire Station 2 open house. I would tell you the peer team for our reaccreditation will be here first week of December. We're planning on that. As I mentioned, the community risk assessment standard of cover will be coming out to you shortly. We're still supporting the implementation of our strategic plan. That again was kind of placed on hold as we had to focus on the pandemic. But we're re-engaging our staff and our strategic plan, and we'll also support the town's strategic plan that we discussed last week. And we're implementing new records management system and some other staffing program and a learning management. And we're finalizing our new EMS protocol with our medical control physician, and Tom Dunn is working on the emergency management accreditation, which will benchmark our emergency management program against national standards. And with that, I am finished with my presentation. So you've already asked some questions. I made some notes that we'll get back to you on.
Bill?
Again, thank you, Chief, and to our colleagues, is there any other comment or question?
Yes, Bill.
Yes, please.
Chief, I got to tell you, the feedback inside Sea Pines on the new fire station #2 is overwhelmingly positive. It looks real good and people are really proud of it. Good job on that.
Well, thank you. And thank you all, Town Council, for the support. Some of you may recall that we actually voted to approve the funding for that station the meeting before Hurricane Matthew. That station and the rec center they were both approved in 2016. And of course, after the hurricane, we had to refocus, but we appreciate all your support. It is a good facility. It represents the neighborhood very well, I think. So we appreciate that. And I speak on behalf of all the staff. I appreciate everything town staff and town council does to support fire rescue. And I thank my team. They're out there on the sidelines this morning. I thank them for everything they've done. I just try to keep us going in the right direction and keep the standards high, and they take over for me and execute the mission. And I appreciate that for what they do. And without the town council and your support, we would struggle. So I appreciate everything you do for us, and we'll stay out there executing the mission to the best of our ability.
Good job, Brad. I have a question of you as a large employer on the island. What are you seeing in terms of employment trends, and what do you have to do to attract and retain a qualified employee in fire rescue?
Well, we had a meeting with HR Friday to talk about some of that. I think we'd already implemented some bonus program where if someone came in with the certifications and we hired them, which allows them to go directly to the line and start working, they're certified as a firefighter or EMT. We started a bonus program to recognize them for that, to try to entice people to apply and reward those that we end up hiring. I'll be honest with you, I'm seeing a lot of trends out there. People are offering bonuses for paramedics and others, for hiring bonuses. Several departments had given bonuses over they've given some sort of bonus for the COVID response. We've seen several departments. I know Mount Pleasant, I would just say they just went through a comp study. So there's a lot of competition out there for a workforce that, and law enforcement sees it too. But there's a lot of competition. So we're looking and trying to think of some ideas of how we can entice people to come to work here. I would say from what I've been told, and I'm not an expert on it, housing costs in Bluffton are high. Rental is extremely high. So even if we get some young members to come in, they're struggling to find a rental property they can afford, until they can get established. And even sharing with 2 or 3, it's a challenge out there, the entire concept, both of housing and recruiting, because of everyone's recruiting. We see that all over the state and all over the U.S. I mentioned the 911 center. I've seen several articles where 911 centers are understaffed in Denver and other areas. So it's we're looking at it, working with HR and seeing what we can come up with to continue to recruit. We got name brand here. We got a respected fire department. We got a great community, but it's challenging.
Well, I hear you talking about comp package and housing. So those are the 2 primary drivers in your ability to attract a qualified employee?
Yes, I would say right now, maintaining competitive compensation and benefits, which we have good benefits, and then just the general development of the entire, the Savannah, Pooler, Hilton Head, Beaufort, Bluffton, on up to the Charleston area, all the coastal area, Horry County, Myrtle Beach. Everyone is hiring firefighters and law enforcement right now. And many of them are short-staffed.
No surprise there, Brad. Thank you.
No, there's not. You're right.
Bill, can I just jump in on that?
Yes, please.
I know that we are trying, we have a big agenda, but I just wanted to, some time ago, maybe it was another report, we were talking about stipends, and that we provide stipends for some of the sheriff deputies to be able to live closer and on Hilton Head. And I think I had asked at that time whether or not we did the same for fire and rescue. And I think that it's smart for us to revisit that, addressing Chief Tadlock's concerns with regard to housing and the such here, and being able to attract and retain our qualified and professional staff through fire and rescue has to be a priority. So if we're not currently doing it, I think that we need to look at it and make sure that we put that into place in the near future.
Thank you, Tammy. At the pleasure of the committee, I'll move that thought on to the town manager and to the mayor, and maybe HR could be called upon at a future town council meeting to address what we're doing, what we're not doing, and maybe what we could do. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is the beach master plan. As we begin this discussion, I think many of us are of the mind that, yes, we do want to be best in class in everything that we do here. We do want to demonstrate excellence to our residents and to our visitors. And then from time to time, when we look at one of our tangible asset in the town, we might find that we are falling a little bit short. Some people could say we're falling a great deal. And that leads to the topic of the Islanders Beach. My recollection is that this was brought into existence for the Islanders, and the suggestions that we received from those that spoke earlier in the meeting, in my opinion, were well informed. They were pointed, respectful. They were very direct, constructive, and I think to be determined later, but I think quite doable. So today, we're not going to be reaching any conclusions, but I do hope from a process standpoint, we recognize this as an opportunity to serve our constituents, to serve our residents relative to their beach much better than we have been. A lot of work has been done in terms of conversations. The town manager and Josh and Jeff Bakalu have gone on site and met with representatives of this group. We have people in this room that some are new and some have been here for a while. Aaron Block, facilities manager, he's here today. Mark Robson, our beach operations manager, is here today, as well as Keith Fallon, the beach maintenance supervisor. So speaking for our town manager, I think all hands are on deck here. And we recognize this not as a problem so much as an opportunity to do much better in the future. So with that, Jeff, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Harkins. And yes, we appreciate the comments and the coordinated input of those first three speakers. I know they represent a much larger group, but they've gotten together and they've assessed the issues, they've done research. And so we very much appreciate how they've given us a concise, consolidated desire on their part. I'm going to run through a PowerPoint presentation, and I will be swift in this and get to the end and ask for questions. All right. Yeah, the purpose and objectives. We're here today. We want to improve the overall function of the user's experience at our town beach parks. But the number one priority is definitely Islanders Beach Park. And for the reasons you've heard today of the island residents who have a passion and desire to have us do a better job managing this park. The town manager came on board this year and he looked at beach operations. And after emails and calls and inquiries, assessing what we do and how we do it, thought there's better ways we can manage the beach. We had a strategic plan meeting on Thursday, went very well. There are 3 distinct elements of that plan associated with beach operations. One of those is adopt a beach operations master plan pertaining to a lot of the things we're talking about today, how to do better with parking, access, et cetera. Also implement a parking master plan. That is going to be heard by Public Planning Committee on Thursday. So very important issue. Josh is
Thursday of this week.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Thursday of this week, Mr. Lennox or Mr. Ames Committee, I'm sorry,
Okay.
will be hearing that issue. I understand. And the third one, beach shuttle service enhancements. You know, we have a good program now. We have satellite parking. We can have people, you know, picked up at various parts of the island and brought to the beaches. But we'll look at making that program better. The primary function of these beach parks, we want to provide parking and access to the beach. We want to make that the best we can. Several of these parks have other amenities, restroom, picnic shelters, playgrounds. Some folks may use the park and never even go to the beach, as we have these nice amenities for them to use. Here's a list of the parks from the south up to the north. Alder Lane, small parking lot down off South Forest Beach. Caligny with the big lot next to Low Country Celebration. Burke's Beach at Chaplin. Dreesen, Follyfield, Islanders, all in the same vicinity. And then Fish Hall and Mitchellville up near the north end. Here's a map representing those. This is just taken from the website, so folks can go to the website and figure out where to go. And as I mentioned, that parking master plan, hopefully we'll move to an app or something that is easier to find and access and drive people to those parks more swiftly. This is zoomed in on the lower south end beach parks. Alder Lane, got 22 metered spaces down there. Folks have to cross South Forest Beach Drive and then access the beach through an easement path there. We have Low Country Celebration Park and the Caligny Beach Park, access through the Caligny Beach Park, which was a very nice park facility. At the Mid-Island, we have Burke's Beach at Chaplin Park. There are satellite spaces up near Castnet. Several of the Chaplin parking spaces in the summertime are used for beach when there are not programmed sports activities going on there. We have Dreesen Beach Park, Follyfield Beach Park, and the Islanders. There are metered spaces you can see at Dreesen, Follyfield, and Islanders. Those will be addressed in the parking master plan as well. And on the North Island, we have Fish Hall and Mitchellville. As I said earlier, when the town manager assessed beach operations, how people access the beach, what were some of the comments and concerns people were sharing, he started an initiative. He gave directive to focus more on these beach parks. How can we do better? How can the users have a better experience? One of the first things we did was develop a beach operations team. In the past, facilities management had managed all of these parks in conjunction with the other parks, athletic fields, passive parks, et cetera. But we devoted a specific team to beach parks, and that's all they do all day, every day when they're at work, is focusing on providing a better user experience and maintaining those parks. We created a beach ambassadors program. This had never been done before. We hired temporary seasonal workers, and they were to welcome guests, answer questions, help direct them. And we received a lot of positive feedback about that. We hired a professional security firm to help manage parking. They worked all summer down at Caligny and up at Islanders and some at Dreesen. We developed a share program in which people could leave a toy, take a toy, leave a chair, take a chair. We think that was very successful, and we will want to expand on that as we go forward. Here's the slide of the beach team. This is my favorite slide in the presentation, probably. We have Mark Robson is the beach operations manager, Keith Fallon, beach operations maintenance supervisor, and we have Nick O'Neill and Chuck Hall, facilities technicians. So this team of 4 is devoted to working the beaches, parking issues, maintenance issues, access issues. They help manage the contracts we have with Shore Beach Services, with towing, with parking, litter control, etc. So we've got this devoted focus, which is something we've never done before. Talking about Islanders Beach Park goes back to the purchase of the land in 1992. So the town purchased this property for $4 million and 50,000. And we constructed the park in 1999 for approximately 200,000. There was a town council resolution. Part of it, we had beach pass parking at Folly Field back then, and they wanted to devote that to 100 at Islanders, 30 at Drees, and 30 at Cligney. There was later a resolution to dedicate no more than 20% of the total beach access parking to pass holders. That was also in 99. In 2004, we went to selling a 2-year beach pass. I think with the parking management plan, we will look at all of these parking issues. We may change that to an annual pass. That's to be determined. In 2010, there was a town council resolution to establish metered spaces for the general public at Islanders Beach Park. How this came about was there was a DHEC grant opportunity for beach nourishment. And so the state had funds, federal funds that could be utilized for beach renourishment. They came to the town trying to solicit folks to take up this grant. And my understanding is if the grants hadn't been used, the money would have gone back to federal coffers. And so a decision was made then that we would take that money from DHEC as part of that grant. And in return, we would have to install 25 meter spaces.
If we could bring Josh Gruber in, to just dive a little deeper on this. When you receive funds from a public source, obviously there's an obligation. Could you share with us, Josh, how resolute and firm that obligation is and where it is and from a timetable standpoint and what we're doing currently? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have contacted the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. That's the state agency that we had entered into this grant agreement with about a little bit more than 10 years ago, as Jeff was explaining, for the purposes of receiving funding for a beach renourishment project. We've looked at the specific language of that grant document. We believe that that language is favorable to our position, but obviously, given the significant amounts of funding that was involved, we want to make sure that there's a clear understanding between us and the state as to what our respective roles and continuing obligations are, if any. And so we have contacted them. We have submitted some documentation to them along the lines of letting them know our desire to remove the 25 metered spaces from Islanders, and that we are wanting to get confirmation from them that we do have the lawful ability to do that without fear of ramifications of having to repay that grant funding. So we are waiting for that formal kind of decision from the state. We have been in contact with them as recently as a couple of weeks ago. Given the age of the documents that are involved, they've had to pull some files that were in archives. And so it's taken them a little bit of time to get through the information, but it is something that we are actively pursuing as staff to try and remove those spaces from Islanders Beach Park.
Thank you, Josh. And for the citizen committee, this effort is in progress. It addresses, I believe, the fourth directional point, which is to remove the meters. So more to follow later. Please continue.
All right. Here is a site plan when Islanders Park was being developed. It started out with the parking spaces on the top and then was later amended to install more spaces down on the bottom. I have some photos of the park here just to show you some of the current state of amenities and kind of the functionality issues. This is the entrance off Follyfield Road. You can see how on a busy summer day, and the first public speakers mentioned the pedestrian traffic. If you get several people, maybe 4 wide with wagons and all of their beach gear walking down the middle of the road, you can imagine how that can be convoluted or conflicting with motorists. And so there's a few ways to address that. One of them which is providing a proper pedestrian facility, of course, a sidewalk or a pathway. We can talk later about restricted use. If it is for residents only, there could be a mechanism such as an ID or a pass that the security would check and allow those folks in. But you can see the issue right now is that the pedestrians are walking down the road shared with vehicles and creating a conflict. Here are some of the parking spaces. We have all of the pervious paver parking spaces in this park for, that stormwater infiltration into the ground. Here are the metered spaces. As we mentioned, 25. Josh is working aggressively with DHEC to see if we can remove or relocate those. This is the playground area, which I'm sure would be the envy of many municipalities, and a nice equipment, nice facility, but it's dated and was put in long ago, and we definitely think we can do better and upgrade the playground amenities. Here's some more photos of that. The restroom amenities, same thing here. We do a good job of maintaining and keeping these facilities up. But you heard the residents talk about the overuse and if they need to be updated and things done better, we are definitely looking into that.
So I think the point here is, I think the pictures say it all, but we're acknowledging the fact that facilities like this are tired, and something certainly Mr. Black will be directing his attention to.
Yes, sir. It's inside of one of the restrooms. Here is one of the functionality issues. When this park was developed, the building was elevated, of course, per the building code and to meet flood elevations. And over time, this was seen as a valuable parking space for ATVs, beach patrol, et cetera. And so folks started parking under here. Well, this building was built in a low spot and it does hold water. And so one of the improvements we'll want to undertake in this park, there could be some capital upgrades to improve the storm drainage and mitigate the ponding in this area. We also have a tent occupying a few spaces over there for the Sea Turtle Patrol. We're looking at places to relocate that, perhaps in the Chaplain Park area off Singleton. I think there are other areas that would give them direct access mid-island and would free up these spaces. So that's one of the things we are definitely going to do this off season. This is the decking as you're coming up by the restroom facility. These are the 2 shower towers. The earlier commenters mentioned about the wear and tear and use on these. I know it's an ongoing effort to keep these things operational and maintained. They do get a lot of use, and we will look at the type we're using. Do we need more, et cetera, to accommodate the users at this park? You'll see some of the signage we have. We want to consolidate that, make a much more appealing aesthetic, consistent signage, colors, fonts, size, et cetera, just to make this more appealing to the user. Here's the deck, the boardwalk going out to the beach. We've just used treated southern yellow pine on this decking for years. We're going to look at different materials there that would hold up better, be less prone to loose screws, splinters, et cetera. And this is a view from the beach looking back at the park. On the right-hand side, when you see that first bend, we just received bids last week for the Overlook Pavilion. This was an initiative that came about last year and council directed us to pursue. So We did receive bids and hopefully we'll have a contract in place. If all those bid documents are correct and responsive, we will have a contract in place in November and be able to break ground on that facility. And it will be in place for next spring.
And this is for people that have difficulties ambulating.
Yes, sir. The origin of that project, I think if there are wheelchair bound folks or folks just want to sit in the shade and look out at the ocean and feel the breeze and read a book, what have you, this facility will provide that luxury for them. This is a beach matting running out to the beach from the end of the boardwalk. This is an older style matting, maybe a little more slippery, less friction, gets wrinkled. We're going to a new standard, the Moby mat. We're installing some of those at the other parks, but anyhow, please know that it's going to be upgraded with a new standard Moby mat. And here we are once you arrive out at the beach. And as I said, that matting will be extended. Yeah, Mr. Harkins mentioned how we had a site meeting. The town manager spoke to some of the citizens that spoke earlier today. It was a very good, productive meeting. I think we're in sync with their ideas. We hear them loud and clear, and we're putting together plans to address those goals. I think today, before council, it's the direction, the policy of where we're going. Do we agree this is the direction we need to be heading in? As the town manager asked us to look at these parks, there's 4 distinct areas that we need to take on, operations of the park, then the maintenance, where our capital improvements needed, and then policy decisions by council. Operations, I mentioned a few of these new initiatives earlier. I think the seasonal security and ambassador hiring is crucial from May through September. Now that we have the beach team in place and some experiences from last year, here in the off season, in the wintertime, we'll develop a program and a search to get the correct people in place early and manage them throughout the summer. The parking master plan is a huge deal for us to better manage these beach parks. Marketing of park and intended use. This goes for all of the parks, but more so with Islanders for any specific, access restrictions, et cetera. Promote preferred, I think this is general public beach parks, but Caligny and all of these others, we want to make sure anyone who taps on their phone has quick and ready access and correct knowledge of what is available, types of parking spaces, how many, how far to the beach, et cetera. Towing rotation. This is a bit a tough one, finding companies that will accept something, credit cards. When people pay for credit cards for their towing, they've been known to go cancel that as soon as they get their car back. And so towing companies, some are resistant, but we've been working to find options that will accommodate our needs and not be too restrictive on the user who may get towed. We have trash and litter contracts right now with facilities management. We're going to look at those scopes and tightening them up to see where we can do better. Maintenance, like I say, these fellows and the contractors keep everything looking neat and clean. We have landscape contracts working right now. And again, as those come up for renewal, if we need to amend those scopes and redo that, we will. We want to have consistent site appurtenances. The trash cans, the bike racks, the bollards, there's a variety out there now when you go to the parks. You can see 3 different styles of trash cans in a single park, let's say. And we want to make sure all of those are consistent and aesthetic and give it a Hilton Head look. Bike repair stations, that's something we get a lot of folks riding the bikes to the beach and whatever, may need to pump up a tire, change a tire, et cetera. But we can have these permanently affixed and available for use at our beach parks as well. Removing the meters, again, the parking master plan, and this speaks to the Islanders Beach Park where we're doing our best to get those removed as soon as possible. Capital improvements, as I mentioned, we're going to construct the scenic overlook. Here we'll have a contract in place next month. Also, this is at Islanders Beach Park. We think there's opportunity to create even more spaces. We'll do so in a tasteful manner, respecting the environment and all of the codes, of course. But we do think there's an opportunity to provide more spaces for beach pass holders. We built a security guard station down at the entrance to Coligny. We'd like to build one up there at Islanders as well, to have them work that throughout the summer months and make sure only people that should be accessing that park are allowed in. Access via a pathway or sidewalk, we'll consider that coming from Follyfield Road. We'll move the tent to another suitable mid-island location to free up more spaces. Pedestrian connection, we looked at how that boardwalk winds up from the bathrooms out to the beach, and there could be better connections down to the playground picnic area, and that would not cost too much to make that connection. And improve signage. As I said, there's a lot of restrictive signage. Don't do this, don't do that. We want to provide more informational signage, wayfinding, et cetera, but to have a consistent look amongst those signs. More capital improvements. The playground, as I said, it's a couple decades old. I think we could do better with the types of equipment, with the play surface underneath. There's a cluster of beautiful live oak trees that perhaps we could build a tree house in. When parents are over cooking out at the picnic pavilion or having a evening away from the beach, perhaps, they could utilize that area. We could add a fire pit and grilling stations. Right now, there's a picnic shelter, but that's it. I mentioned the boardwalk connecting down from the main walkway out to the beach, the playground area. I think the lighting could be improved. We could have timers and have upward and downward lighting for a much better aesthetic there. Boardwalk decking, that's an ongoing maintenance issue. I think we may find something, new material, safer, better, longer lasting. And upgrade the beach access matting. Storm drainage improvements, that's something we're already looking at. Stormwater management team has kind of assessed that and has an idea of what we need to do. Landscaping within the park, it's been very natural. I think we can clean that up, and as we add more spaces and amenities, we will look at overhauling the landscape. Bathrooms, look at that and make sure fixtures are sustainable and hold up to the use. And security cameras, look in there to see the needs to improve coverage and better assess anything that may be going on after. Some of the policy items, that's what we're here for mostly to discuss. You heard the three ladies provide input on their goals, and they've submitted that in writing. The bus drop off, that's one that I think we could easily remedy. Right now, a lot of folks come in there and drop off various groups. We could redirect that to another nearby park. Follyfield or Dreesen are probably the most logical. Vehicle access restrictions, timeshares, buses, golf carts, et cetera. And the folks that spoke earlier mentioned about the metered spaces that really open things up. Before it was a sticker and that's all you need to get in there. And we can look at restricting that access a little better. Pedestrian and bicyclist access, like we said, there's ways to manage that, whether it's infrastructure, facilities, sidewalks, pathways, or some kind of a pass for those eligible residents to access the park. But we'd like to address that. And the beach pass revisions. Right now, it's a nominal fee. It's $30 for 2 years. People come in. We'd like to make that available online, of course. And the definition of full-time resident is key amongst this. So we really need a very simple, easy for the residents to understand and apply for eligibility, and easy for us to manage. And when we issue these passes. This very generic, of course, this schedule. The policy issues we hope to resolve, as do the citizens this fall and winter. We have ongoing operations and improvements with maintenance and operations. And the capital improvements, we have some funds this year, and we're looking at the soft cost to do some surveying and engineering, et cetera. And things such as the beach matting and some of those smaller items can also be done this year. And so, as I said, we're coming to the committee today looking for endorsement. Removal of those metered spaces at Islanders Park, and based on the condition that we do get legal concurrence from the state granting agency, and to endorse Islanders Beach Park as a residents-only park with a clear and concise definition of resident for operations and management of that policy.
Thank you, Jeff, for that very comprehensive overview. I think recognizing our role is really at the policy level, and we have very capable people that will focus on the strategies and the tactics here. And we have a town manager very much behind upgrading this situation. I think the key principle that we need to consider recommending to our colleagues is that are we truly interested in rededicating this park as an Islanders Beach Park? Then if we are, a lot of tactical things will follow from this. Certainly a redefinition or a definition of who is a resident and who is not a resident. And so if we could begin the conversation with that, I would appreciate it. Comments from the committee members. David, please.
All right, let me make sure I'm up. I could be very brief. I think if we can remove the meters, we remove the meters. And I think we should go in the direction of being residents only. But having said that, an awful lot of stuff falls out. And a question I would have, is there an implied access due to a historical precedent? In other words, have real estate developers built timeshares in that area based on access, and does that complicate our ability to move forward? There is the statement was made that there was the beach overlook was going to be built here at Islanders Beach, and a mention of a treehouse. I think we have to be mindful that as we add amenities at Islanders, we might want to also duplicate that capability and amenity at a public park. In other words, a gazebo or overlook pavilion for tourists who are restricted to a wheelchair seems like a gesture that we shouldn't exclude conceptually. And then also the idea of a treehouse for visiting families and children makes a lot of sense to me. So I just think that those amenities should be thought of as coupling with residents and public. I think, Jeff, you hit on something that's very important, and that is consistent design and quality. And so I'm seeing this as really requiring a overall new site plan for Islanders Beach. I don't know how you can piecemeal this with a comprehensive redesign of parking, access, picnic area, and so on. So I think that we are going to need to look at this comprehensively. The last comment I would make is that we are a hospitality community. And so communication is very important so that visitors have an accurate view of or expectations for use in this area. I think that we could really create some problems if we didn't resolve access to Folly Field Park and Dreesen Park and how people get there. So I think that the pedestrian access is one level of challenge, and then the shuttle relocation of timeshare visitors is another. So I think that I'd like to underscore the need to understand both the logistics of relocating capacity, but also the communication that will require. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, David. Excellent points, and I think good direction for the staff and the town manager to address. And certainly the redirection of tourists that may have the impression that Islanders, that they can use Islanders Beach today, but for that to change tomorrow, that transition has to be done with a high degree of sensitivity, period. Tom, please, Tom Lennox.
Thank you, Bill. I support both of Jeff's recommendations. I think there's going to be some fallout if we execute them that has to be addressed. I think we are taking something away from people that heretofore have had access. So we have to find a way to make this entire process access neutral. And if it involves Folly Field and Dreesen, so be it. But the communications and the announcement have to be in such a way that we don't have people feel as if we have taken something that they've had access prior away. And I think we can do it to the extent that we improve Islanders. I think ongoing, we want to make certain that we are improving public access parks as well. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of communication campaign we can mount. And it's going to be even more interesting to work on defining what a resident is. But I support going forward, Bill.
Thank you, Tom. Tammy, please.
Okay. Great presentation, Jeff. And as you know, I've also been asked by a group of island-wide residents to help them in their pursuit of returning Islanders Park to the residents of Hilton Head Island. And while we're a hospitality community, I think it's the right move to make that we put residents first in this particular situation and utilize all of our other beaches, certainly Folly Field, certainly Dreesen, but don't want to bypass some thought to be given to Fish Hall, Mitchellville Beach area, where these types of facilities that we're recommending are lacking and ought to be included and expanded to benefit not only the folks who live in that area, but to our visitors who would find that location, as we all do, absolutely idyllic and worth a day at the beach. And having said that, you may know or recall that I was approached by island residents to begin the discussion on the pavilion for the handicap, those who are having difficulty with their mobility getting down to the sand area for a day at the beach. And so I'm pleased and I'm grateful to all of my colleagues for having supported that and excited that we're moving along with that. Addressing the Islanders Beach Park, and I was careful to say Islanders Park just a moment ago, because it's come to my attention that part of our goals may very well be to rename Islanders Beach Park to Islanders Park, and make that very clear that it is a island park that we are returning to the residents, since we have no control over the beach itself, as you know. So that's one piece that I think we need to think about. Also, something that came up strongly in the discussions was the definition of resident. And a number of ideas have been shared, I think, with all of us who have received the documents and through the various meetings that these groups have been having over the last couple of months. So a strong definition of residents, to be clear. And one of the reasons that's important, as you think about the number of residents that we have who don't have beach access within their communities and really rely on Islanders Park for their access, there's still going to be a limited number of spaces there. And so that definition needs to be very clear. It's my understanding that previously resident parking passes have been given out in large numbers and to pretty much a wide variety of people who maybe in fact wouldn't qualify even under the state's definition of resident. So that's an important piece from their perspective. I would also say that just as a general comment, the golf carts, I know I've been getting many phone calls and emails and text messages with regard to golf carts in this area, and not only on the roads, but on the bike and pedestrian paths. So needs to be some attention given there. I don't want to, as we think this through, not consider buses in terms of those that come from senior centers and other housing on the island whose residents rely on a shuttle bus to get them to around the island. And so while generally buses need to be excluded, those buses certainly are transporting residents and need to make sure they have a pass to be able to use the facilities there. And I realize this is a first conversation, and I hope I've touched on a number of things. I think that it's been well pointed out by our callers, by previous meetings that we've attended, and it's a work in progress. The foot traffic is a large issue that they are concerned about. They're concerned about it as it stands today, and they're very concerned about it as the next year or so comes and the timeshares across the street on Polyfield at Wimbledon become completed, and folks are coming and going from there. So there's a number of ideas on how to help with that. Need to find out whether or not they will fall underneath a resident definition. And I'm going to back up, because one of the things I wanted to say when we were talking about facilities and the number of parking spots that are there, all of these extra components, building a picnic area and enhancing the playground area and those types of things with a limited number of spaces might cause those parking spaces to be utilized for a longer period of time than it would necessarily if folks were just coming and using the park and going to the beach and riding their bikes, etc. So it may cause some problems. Just a thought on that. I don't want that to overwhelm what it is that the goal here is, which is to provide people access to a park and parking that will help alleviate the problems that they are currently experiencing and expect to experience in the future. Anyway, as a first meeting, I think that we've done really well. I'm happy to express what I've been asked to convey privately in larger groups. However, with the rest of y'all, anyone who's interested and would support us moving Islanders Park to a residents-only facility. There you
Thank
go.
you. Thank you, Tammy. What I'd like to do now, I know the town manager's on this call.
Bill, do I have the opportunity to speak on this?
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I realize I'm an alternate, but I do have some opinions on this. First, let me say that I certainly support the policy, two policy items that Jeff has put before us, and I'd like to see us work to get those policies adopted as the policies of the town. I will not repeat the excellent comments that I've heard first from the citizens and then from my colleagues on the council here, but I think that there are two areas that need to be emphasized. The first is I see that you've created a beach management team that is broken it out and have specific assignments there. That is excellent. That's what's needed, but there's something missing there, and that's enforcement. One of our big problems here, as I see it, is that we do not have enough enforcement personnel employed by the staff to, in fact, enforce not only the beach ordinances, but traffic ordinances and parking ordinances and zoning violations and health violations, et cetera. We need to have more enforcement staff assigned to the beach and more enforcement staff to apply to use in other enforcement activities. The second point that I want to bring up is fee for parking. I realize we have a beach management plan and we have a parking management plan and a lot of this has been recommended by the consultant that we have. I recently went over and took a tour of Tybee Island, a sister beach community, and they have very strict regulations on parking throughout the town. It is very aggressively enforced. There are signs throughout the town. I saw at least 2 enforcement personnel cruising around. They have the opportunity through the internet and parking passes that are assigned to know whether or not there has been a violation. I realize that this will be a major change for the use of facilities on the island, most specifically the beach, but it is something that clearly we need to do to make sure that people are paying something towards the advantages that our community offers them through the beach, et cetera. So I think that we we're going to be able to have some form of paid for parking plan in place for the next warm weather season coming up. I realize that's going to be a very difficult thing to accomplish in that period of time. And indeed, we may not be able to adopt and actually have in place all of the recommendations of our parking consultant. But I think that it's vital that we start to do that and we start to get our citizens, not our citizens so much as our visitors, trained to understand they're going to be paying for parking. Another aspect of that is that our fines for parking violations are way too low in today's inflationary environment. We need to be reviewing all of those. Part of that responsibility, I think, would fall on you, Jeff, but you'll have the support, I believe, of the town council in doing that. So I am strongly in support of Islanders Beach being Islanders only. I recognize that there are a lot of different aspects to this. Those have been dealt with, they have been mentioned, and I support adopting most, if not all, of those policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Are there any other members of town council on this call that wish to comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay. Alex, I didn't know you were on the call. Welcome.
Yeah, how we doing? Thank you for the opportunity. Just, I guess, three high level comments here, and I too support the idea of giving our residents the opportunity to have beach access. Councilman Ames touched on the accessibility for folks to obtain views and whatnot that are handicapped. I think that's something that we may want to consider as a standard or policy throughout all of our beaches. I agree with him on that, as well as the safe pedestrian access. Okay. I know we're talking about Islanders Beach here today, but there are others that are defined as public assets that we don't necessarily have that at the moment. And the last one, I think Mr. Buckaloo showed us a slide of a current policy where we are devoting 20% of our beach passes to parking spaces throughout the town. I think that's something that we may need to take another look at. I don't know if that 20% is outdated, if we need to increase, decrease, whatever the case may be, but I think that's an important aspect to our conversation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alex.
Mr. Chairman, may I make one last comment?
Certainly.
Thank you. I decided to say this when I heard that the town manager was on board. I'd just like to emphasize what I consider to be a priority, and that's an island-wide beach access and capacity study. So many of these issues fall out of the number of people we want on the beach, access, parking, facilities, and so on. So just want to put that out in front of us again. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce two new members of Mr. Orlando's team, Mr. Aaron Black, who's the facilities manager, and Mr. Mark Robinson. I'm just going to ask them to briefly introduce themselves and ask the question, has this conversation and these comments from the public and our colleagues been helpful? And then I'm going to swing to the town manager and then wrap up with a call for a motion.
I'm Mark Robson, Beach Operations Manager. I've gone to several of these meetings and met lots of people, my former dog walkers, people who come to the park. I try to get to Islanders Beach Park as often as I can, usually about 8:30, and I see a lot of the locals there. Received lots of emails. A lot of them have called me. I love all their ideas and their input, and it's very helpful to us. We've been writing a lot of warning tickets at various parks. You know, we do not have the meat in it for anything, but we are writing warning tickets. But it's been very helpful, and I think we're on the right direction. And I appreciate the council and Mark Orlando for getting this program together. I think it'd be quite helpful for the citizens of this town.
There, thank you.
My name's Aaron Black. I'm recently new as facility manager here with the town, but I am kind of an old veteran to this area. I've been coming down to Hilton Head since the early 80s. My grandparents bought down here. And just like probably everybody that's on this call, you know, the mystique and the aura of Hilton Head Island is what keeps you here and what continues to have you come back. And just a little bit about my background. I've hospitality background, worked in Sea Pines, worked, I think, for every Marriott here on the island, spent some time with the school district, and just recently came from Palmetto Bluff. So I am used to the resort atmosphere and the hospitality atmosphere. And Mr. Ames, I totally agree with you about the island as being very hospitable and what we need to cater to. And I think there's a lot of different things that we can do to improve amenities as well as make things uniformed and, you know, great for everybody that comes down here, both residents and, you know, visitors. So I think the comments made today are totally on par, and I think everybody's very passionate about what needs to be done here, especially for Islanders Beach, but for all the beaches and parks around the island. And just very excited to get involved. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fallon, thoughts, comments?
No, well, I'm excited to be in this position. I think it's everybody overwhelmingly has the same direction and the same goals, and I'm glad to be part of that. I'm glad to be working with Mark. Just the list of capital improvements that we're discussing. I was very excited, and I'm glad to be a part of that. And as the maintenance supervisor, I look forward and I welcome that challenge to keep those facilities clean, in proper working condition, in uniformed, and just a place where all the residents and the visitors can enjoy and talk about when they're done with their vacation.
Good. Thank you very much. Mr. Orlando, you obviously have pulled together a very talented team here. Your thoughts about moving forward, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody. Mr. Harkins, I appreciate your comment there. Pulled together a great team. As I was taking notes today, getting the right people in the right place at the right time is both an art and a science. And that is my focus, especially from a big picture standing. So great job today, Jeff and Aaron, Mark. Moving forward, your direction, your input so far is very clear. I'm appreciate the time put into this by the residents that have given input. I've met out at Islanders. I was asked to take a look at Islanders, but you will notice today the presentation that Jeff prepared is big picture. It includes all of our beach parks. So Mr. Lennox, I believe, said an important point was almost an access neutral plan, and the communication of that is key. So we have some work to do policy wise, fees, ordinances, a resolution on resident only access at Islanders, dollars in our capital program. We will move this forward at your direction. And so I appreciate your time. Time is of the essence, and we look forward as well to talking about the beach master plan or the parking master plan at the upcoming public planning committee meeting. Please know I'm not allowing those two to operate in their own respective silos, but letting the lead of each initiative, so be it, through the respective committee work, but also know that behind the scenes, we are making sure that both of those plans will support each other.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orlando. So we're at the conclusion of the meeting. I would like to suggest a recommendation translated into a motion to go before town council as a recommendation from this committee. So using some of the language from some of the residents, let's move that we rededicate, I like that word there, rededicate and endorse Islanders Beach as a residents only park. And of course, that would include the definition of resident for detail, and also to the extent possible legally to endorse the removal of metered spaces at Islanders Beach Park, obviously with the concurrence of the partnering agency of the state. So is there a motion to?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Tammy, any concluding discussion before we vote? All right, if all those in favor would please raise your right hand. So moved. And I think that concludes the meeting. As we conclude, I want to make clear how much we appreciate the comments and the direction of the residents, as well as the comments and directions of my colleagues on town council, and the comments and directions and thoughts from staff assigned to this. I think we have a major opportunity to make a statement here, one that could be replicated in many other things throughout the community. So is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you again.
Thank you.